You've probably heard it before. Windows is everywhere. Millions of users rely on it daily. Businesses run critical operations on it, and for many, it's simply what computers use. But if you've been paying attention to the world of Linux lately, you might have missed one of the most significant shifts in computing in years. Something is happening in the Linux ecosystem that is not just impressive, it's making Windows look, well, obsolete. For decades, Linux was considered the underdog. A niche operating system mostly for developers, server admins, and the occasional tech enthusiast. It was powerful, yes, but notoriously difficult for average users. The setup was clunky, hardware support was spotty, and software availability lagged far behind Windows. People loved Linux for its freedom and customization, but when it came to everyday usability, Windows reigned supreme. That narrative is changing and fast. The first thing you need to understand is that Linux is no longer just a techie's playground. Modern distributions like Ubuntu, Fedora, and Pop!_OS have redefined what it means to use Linux. They are polished, visually appealing, and increasingly intuitive. But the change I'm talking about today goes deeper than just aesthetics or superficial polish. It's a fundamental shift in usability, performance, and accessibility. This is the kind of change that can make longtime Windows users seriously reconsider their allegiance. So, what exactly is happening? In recent years, Linux developers have been working tirelessly to bridge the gap between Linux's legendary flexibility and the plug-and-play convenience that Windows users have come to expect. And it's not just incremental improvement. It's a complete transformation in how Linux interacts with hardware, software, and even the user experience itself. Take, for example, hardware compatibility. For years, Linux users would joke or cry over how certain printers, Wi-Fi adapters, or graphics cards just didn't work. Installing drivers was often a nightmare, involving terminal commands, dependency errors, and hours of Googling. Contrast that with Windows, where drivers were generally plug-and-play. Now this has changed dramatically. Thanks to collaboration between hardware manufacturers and Linux developers, most modern distributions come with robust driver support out of the box. Graphics cards from NVIDIA and AMD, Wi-Fi cards, printers, even some specialized peripherals, these now often work immediately upon installation. No extra downloads, no terminal commands. Just plug in, boot up, and go. It's the kind of convenience Windows users expect, and Linux is finally delivering. But hardware is just the start. The real game changer is how Linux handles software. Historically, Windows dominated because almost every major application was either Windows-only or had a far superior version on Windows. Photoshop, Microsoft Office, Adobe Premiere, these tools were pillars of the Windows ecosystem. Linux alternatives existed, sure, but they often felt like a compromise. Enter the new era of Linux software compatibility. Projects like Wine, Proton, and Crossover have matured to the point where running Windows software on Linux isn't just possible, it's seamless. In gaming, Steam's Proton has revolutionized how Linux handles Windows-only titles. Thousands of games now run on Linux with minimal tweaking, many performing better than they do on Windows, thanks to Linux's leaner, more efficient architecture. For productivity software, things have evolved too. Microsoft Office Online works perfectly in browsers on Linux, and alternatives like LibreOffice or OnlyOffice have grown incredibly feature-rich. Adobe's ecosystem, long considered a Windows-exclusive stronghold, is slowly becoming accessible through cloud-based apps and web interfaces. And with software packaging innovations like Flatpak and Snap, installing complex applications has become a matter of a single command or a few clicks. No dependency hell, no frustration. Now, let's talk about something Windows users rarely think about: speed and resource efficiency. Windows, for all its polish, is notoriously resource-hungry. Every update seems to demand more from your CPU and RAM. Background processes, telemetry services, and built-in apps constantly consume resources, often slowing down even high-end systems. Linux, by contrast, has always excelled in efficiency, but modern distributions have taken it to another level. Lightweight desktop environments like GNOME, KDE Plasma, and XFCE are faster than ever, even on older hardware. Boot times are lightning fast, updates are streamlined, and system resources are used intelligently rather than wasted. In short, Linux feels snappier, more responsive, and just lighter. You can run a full-featured desktop environment on a 5-year-old laptop and have it outperform a brand new Windows machine. That's not Haikut's reality. And then there's security. Windows has improved significantly, but it's still the primary target for malware and ransomware. Linux, thanks to its permissions model and open-source nature, is inherently more secure. Updates are fast, transparent, and customizable. Users have control over exactly what gets installed and executed. For someone who values privacy and security, Linux isn't just a better choice, it's the smarter choice. But perhaps the most revolutionary change lies in how Linux is redefining the idea of user control. Windows tries to be simple by hiding complexity, but this often frustrates power users. On Linux, you can have it both ways, a system that's easy for beginners to use, yet infinitely tweakable for those who want total control. Want to change your desktop environment? Easy. Want to script system updates, automate tasks, or even build your own custom OS variant? Possible and often surprisingly accessible. Even the Linux community itself has transformed. Once perceived as elitist and unwelcoming to newcomers, the community now thrives on education and inclusivity. Forums, tutorials, YouTube channels, and official documentation make it easy for someone with zero Linux experience to get started and actually enjoy the experience. The stigma of Linux is too hard is fading fast. One of the most eye-opening examples of this shift is Pop_OS by System76. It's a Linux distribution designed for both developers and creatives, with out-of-the-box hardware support, integrated workspaces, and a clean, visually appealing interface. Users report near-zero frustration with installation and configuration, and the system feels polished in a way that Windows can struggle to match. When you see Windows users switching to Pop_OS and reporting that it just works better, you realize how profound this change really is. We also can't ignore gaming. Windows has long been considered the default gaming platform, and Linux has historically lagged behind. But thanks to Steam's Proton, Lutris, and constant improvements in Vulkan graphics support, Linux gaming is no longer niche. It's viable for mainstream players. AAA games run at full speed, with support for modern GPUs and controllers. Competitive games, indie hits, and even esports titles are playable, often with fewer background processes draining performance. A Windows gamer could switch to Linux today and lose almost nothing in terms of gaming capability. That's a big deal. And cloud computing? Linux dominates there. Windows has presence in enterprise environments, but the servers running the modern internet web servers, cloud applications, containerized apps are overwhelmingly Linux-based. This ecosystem gives Linux users tools, experience, and workflows that Windows simply doesn't match. Developers can work locally in Linux and deploy directly to production without compatibility issues, which is increasingly critical as cloud-native architectures dominate the tech industry. All of these factors converge to a stark reality. Linux is no longer the alternative. For many use cases, it's the better choice, faster, more secure, more flexible, and increasingly user-friendly. Windows isn't disappearing anytime soon, of course, but the gap that once existed is shrinking. And in some areas, it's being reversed entirely. You might be thinking, sure, Linux is improving, but Windows is still simpler for most users. And yes, Windows has the advantage of familiarity, legacy software, and a massive installed base. But change is happening quietly yet rapidly. The new generation of Linux distributions removes the pain points that once made Windows dominant: installation headaches, hardware incompatibilities, slow performance, and clunky software management. What's left is a system that's accessible for beginners, but powerful enough to leave Windows behind in terms of efficiency, control, and modern capabilities. The future is even more exciting. We're starting to see Linux distributions designed specifically for general consumers, complete with app stores, curated software, and one-click installations for productivity and entertainment software. Artificial intelligence and machine learning tools are being integrated into Linux workflows faster than Windows. Gaming is supported at a nearly native level, and cloud-first workflows make development more seamless than ever. So, why hasn't everyone switched yet? Partly because habits are hard to break. Change can be intimidating. But consider this. Every time a Windows user installs Linux today, they are met with an experience that is no longer clunky or esoteric. It's elegant, fast, and capable. Many users find themselves asking, why was I using Windows all this time? And that's exactly the point. Linux has evolved from a niche tool for enthusiasts to a polished, powerful, and genuinely accessible platform. It's not just catching up with Windows, it's surpassing it in meaningful ways. The days of struggling with drivers, fighting through dependency errors, or being locked into a resource-hogging system are fading into history. When you look at it this way, it's hard not to see Windows as the old guard. Reliable? Sometimes. Familiar? Certainly. But flexible, efficient, and forward-looking. Those are areas where Linux is redefining expectations. The platform that was once considered too difficult is now the one, setting the bar for what modern computing should look like. If you're a Windows user curious about what all the fuss is about, now is the perfect time to explore Linux. Modern distributions are ready for you. They install easily, support your hardware, run your software, and do it all without the bloat and frustration that often accompanies Windows. For anyone open to change, Linux is no longer just an option, it's a better option. And for the tech-savvy among us, the possibilities are almost limitless. Automation, scripting, customization, virtual environments, containerized apps, and robust security measures all are more accessible than ever. Whether you're a gamer, a developer, a creator, or just someone tired of slow-bloated systems, Linux offers a future that Windows struggles to match. It's hard to overstate how significant this moment is. What we're witnessing isn't just an evolution, it's a quiet revolution. Linux has finally become a system that isn't just for hobbyists or professionals, it's ready for mainstream users. And as more people experience this new Linux, the contrast with Windows becomes stark. Windows feels heavy. Windows feels restrictive. Windows feels obsolete. If you're still on the fence, try it for yourself. Install a modern distribution like pop_os, Ubuntu, or Fedora. Explore the software, test your favorite apps, and play a game or two. You might be surprised at how smooth it runs, how fast it boots, and how much control you suddenly have. What once seemed intimidating now feels liberating. Linux isn't just catching up to Windows anymore, it's rewriting the rules of what a desktop operating system can be. It's secure, it's fast, it's capable, and it's beautiful. The choice isn't about technical superiority anymore. It's about user experience, efficiency, and freedom. And in all of those areas, Linux is no longer the underdog, it's the new standard. The implications for the future are profound. Imagine a world where users can easily choose the platform that works best for them without worrying about compatibility, drivers, or software limitations. Imagine desktops that are lean, fast, and secure by default. Imagine a system that empowers you to do more, not less. That future is already here and Linux is leading the charge. Windows will remain familiar and functional for many users, but the gap that once separated it from Linux has closed. In fact, in many cases, Linux has pulled ahead. What was once a niche alternative has become the gold standard for modern computing. And that's why more than ever, it's worth paying attention. Because the Linux of today doesn't just match Windows, it redefines what a desktop operating system should be, and it does so in a way that makes Windows look increasingly obsolete.